out there in Vegas, huh?
Open the package open, gotta free it in a hurry. Drop it in a seam, snap, or pick and spit a bar flurry. The spinning racks need refill, but I'm really not worried. It's the most beautiful thing in the words of Keith Murray. Dipping out in a low-low and slow-mo tipping. Just one tap and it hops up like pogo sticking. This is not a put-together, like Robo Chicken. Still original condition, number match, no parts missing. Willowbrook and Alondra pull over right there. At the Made in Compton Store, I can get something to wear. For men, women, and children, all prices fair.
Thank you.
Got fresh top to bottom, and I slid up out of there. Hops right back in the low-low looking like new money.
Sure do.
Stare all you want, but can't take none from me. Ain't none bouts this cute, sweet, nor funny.
Nope.
Outside in a low ride, rain, sleet, or sunny.
Cool.
The back window's still empty, ain't earned a plaque yet. Not a renegade rider. Hub City to set. Until next time, one thing you can bet. I'll be on my grind double time, pushing a line extra shine drips wet. And you ain't seen none yet.
That was incredible. Much respect.
Yeah, all right.
I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to Bone with Friends in advance. Tonight, my special guest is Les. And man, we go back, man. We're going to go back a little bit on the podcast.
Yes,
Talk
sir.
about some of the early beginnings.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today, Les?
Sounds good. I'm doing pretty good, man. I can't complain, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing good.
All right. Sounds good. Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm going to jump right into it. What do you
All right.
remember the most about Factor House record days back in the early days?
Well, back when I got introduced to you guys, you know, it had to been around, I guess, 2002 or somewhere around that time. Big Dre brought me over when y'all was at the house over there off of Alondra. I can't remember, it was close off of White or somewhere around that area. It wasn't too far from where we had the Runoff Records little studio at. And
Yeah.
I think me, Big Dre, I think the homie Reese was with us that night. We all came over to the house, and it was you, MC8 over there. You had the little young cat from Brooklyn. I forget his name. Little light-skinned dude.
Quick Man.
Yeah, Quick Man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Quick Man.
was all over there that night. You know, we chopping it up. That's when you gave me the Plead the Fifth CDs, Volume 1, Volume 2, Factor House that night. So that's when some of my early memories of Factor House and y'all whole movement that y'all had going on and Smoking the City and all of that. So that was a night I got introduced to that back in 2002. Like I said, hanging with Big Dre, doing stuff with him, because that was my homeboy from elementary. So we go way back since we was kids and stuff. I know everybody call him Freaky Dre and stuff, but I just call him Big Dre. That's what we always called him. Sometimes I addressed him as Freaky, but you know, he was always Big Dre. So when I speak on him, I'm gonna just say Big Dre, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, man, rest in peace, Freaky. That was a good dude.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, good dude, good brother, big heart, you know, and you know, he definitely is missed amongst his peers and people that, you know, ran across him during his lifetime, most definitely. But yeah, that was some of my early memories about Factor House, bro. You know, was that night when I was introduced to y'all and chopping it up and getting to know y'all and know y'all movement, and you was doing stuff with Runoff and all the mixtapes. So yeah, that was some of my early memories.
So is it safe to say Dre was like a big influence in your life?
Yeah, you can say that because, like I said, we were, excuse me, we were classmates since elementary when we went to Emerson Elementary over in Compton. So we was always together, like lifelong friends. So, you know, as we got older and everything, we still stayed in touch. We still did our thing and stuff. So he was one of the major influences as far as actual friend, somebody that you actually knew. You know, it wasn't no thing where it was somebody you came across later on in life. We actually knew each other from childhood.
Yeah. What's some of the moments that you still remember from that era that stand out in your mind like it happened yesterday?
Some of the moments from that era, well, one of them, I guess, is when Dre was getting ready to start his record label. When he was getting ready to start Runoff. We had did some stuff before when the homeboy Lando, rest in peace, Baby Lane, had a Success Records. Him and his brother Pooh. We did some stuff back in '98, so we already had been doing music stuff. And I had an artist named Reese that I brought over there. You know, he's from Compton too. You know, but I brought over there to Success back in '98 when we was doing that thing with the Platinum Heat compilation and all of that. And 2001, fast forward, Dre driving through the turf. I was driving down, came off Long Beach Boulevard, driving down Bennett, and I saw Big Dre out standing outside. I think Mike Doggy was with him, somebody. So he stopped me, said, "Hey, what's up, Big Les?" I stopped my truck, you know, got out. I was like, "Hey, what's up, Dre? What's cracking?" He said, "Yeah, I'm about to start this record label, man. Where Reese at? You know, bring him over, man. We're gonna start this record label called Runoff Records. You know, we're gonna be the future going into the 2000s and all that." I was like, "All right, man. I'm gonna try to locate him and find him and bring him over and get it going and whatever." So that is one of the memories from that time that kind of stands out. Just the formation of Runoff and printing of the T-shirts, the hats, going to Summer Jam, passing out T-shirts and stuff like that, and just trying to get the brand out there and get people familiar with Runoff Records. You know, that was some of the things that stood out.
Absolutely. Hey, so what do you remember the most about Runoff Records, and what role did it play in your journey back then? Because I understand you brought the artist Reese to him.
Yeah, I had Reese, and we had some other up and coming artists, Young Side, rest in peace, Young Side Deshay, his brother Trey Cash, and some other brothers we had came through. And the thing I remember about the album itself, Hard White and everything, was the artist that was on there that contributed to it, that kind of gave it some credibility. You know, you had veteran artists on there like Trey D, Boss Hog, rest in peace, Boss Hog, CPO, that was a homie. Of course, MCA, West Coast Cam, Watts Up to Cam. A lot of different people contributing to a Caviar on a lot of the production and everything. So that part of it, my role really was, I was just trying to market the CDs. I was selling the CDs out of the back of my trunk, you know, going back out to Moreno Valley where I live in the Inland Empire, like just trying to get the name across. So my job was basically trying to market it the best we could without any kind of radio or TV or nothing, just word of mouth. Just, I'm out there just slanging CDs, selling CDs, going back, re-upping. Dre's like, "Damn, man, you putting in the work, man. You bring money back every week." You know, I said, "Yeah, people is excited about it. You know, you got some big names on there, Snoop Dogg and Warren G and everybody." So that people's interest. And so with that also get our artists interest because they're on the album too. So people going to listen to it. So that was some of the things, you know, that kind of, like I said, from Runoff days that I remember and stood out in those moments back then.
Absolutely. So how would you describe the mindset around the music back then?
The music industry, far as West Coast, I thought the mindset back then, I didn't feel personally we were spotlighting new and up and coming artists. We was having a hard time, not you or what we was trying to do. We were actually bringing artists to the table, like getting their music out there and trying to promote it, you know. But my thing is the people that was in the game that had some pull and stuff. You know, it seemed like they were kind of hesitant on supporting new and up and coming artists and supporting their journey and promoting them, you know, not because they were trying to take somebody's spot. But my thing is, you know, we got good music out there. You got people out there that can rap, that can sing, that's talented. You know, they need to be given an opportunity. Now, I don't think at that time on the West Coast, we was taking advantage of bringing out new artists. That's why we kind of had a little lull, I guess you could say, when you compare it to the 90s when, you know, West Coast was on top. You know, you had all the independent record labels doing big numbers and stuff. But during the early 2000s, I think we kind of fell off until guys like yourself, you know, guys like Big Dre, and people just started saying, okay, we just gonna start our own labels and put our own artists out and promote that way, since we can't get deals with major labels and people scared to come to Compton and, you know, get artists or, you know, develop artists. So the mindset back then to me was kind of on a negative side in regards to that.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. It was a lot of gatekeeping back then.
Right. Yeah, that's the word. That's the word I was looking for.
They didn't want to see the new dudes get on. Remember, they was dividing New West, Old West.
Right. Yeah, and that was happening back then. You know, and people think it's happening now, but that was more happening back then before now. So, like you said, it was a lot of gatekeeping. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Hey, so growing up in Compton, what was your childhood like on a day-to-day basis? Because I know I'll be liking to kill the stereotypes, let people know Compton was like a close-knit community, and there was a lot of good things, a lot of positive things going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my childhood growing up, it was good actually. I came from a two-parent household. Both my parents worked. You know, we owned they owned a house. Basically, everybody in our neighborhood, everybody in our street on Pearl Street owned their houses back then. Compton was more, like you said, family oriented. You know, back then, the families that been there for decades. And excuse me, like I said, during my childhood, like I said, it wasn't the typical stereotype stuff that you see on music videos, how they try to portray Compton as the gang banging is dope selling this community in the world, even though we know stuff was going on. But my day-to-day childhood was like normal, playing outside, riding bikes, go-karts, block parties. We used to have block parties on Pearl Street back in the 1980s, the early 80s, pretty much through maybe the mid to almost late 80s. So that was just normal community stuff for us. So like I said, I didn't come from a household where people were in and out of jail or nothing like that. Like I said, my parents both worked. You know, we went to school, so it was normal, man.
So what is some of your best memories of growing up in Compton? Was it the riding the bikes with the homies, with your friends? Or did you ever raise birds, Les?
Nah, I never raised birds, but I had a homeboy. He was older than me. He like in my sister's age group, named Ernest, that lived across the street from us. He raised birds and stuff, so I kind of familiar with it. But that was more his thing. My thing, like I said, was just riding dirt bikes up and down Pearl Street, Laurel, Murr, around that area with the fellas, just doing normal 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kid stuff. That was some of my fondest memories, you know, because those relationships you developed back then, those were like some of my first friends, you know, and then you still remain friends with a lot of those guys. Even to this day, I'll be 52 next month. So just establishing lifelong friendships, you know, that's like one of the things that's dear to my heart, you know, growing up in that area and growing up in that environment in Compton and that surrounding area.
Yeah. We're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be back with some more questions.
All right, sounds good. Let's do it.
What's some of the hardest lessons you learned growing up in our environment?
Some of the hardest lessons. Um, some of the hardest lessons that I recall growing up, far as from the street level, was just how the way I remember Compton, everybody was like kind of together back then, even amongst the gangs and stuff. You didn't see a lot of Crip on Crip violence that I can recall back then. You know, that came later, I guess, during the mid 80s in Compton, and just seeing that transformation kind of was disheartening because, like I said, I remember everybody getting along. You can go to any neighborhoods you wanted to go to, wasn't nobody tripping and all of that. But as we got older, when we got into our teens in 1987, 88, we got into our teen years and our generation was coming up. I saw the vibe kind of shift, and it was like guys that you grew up with, you know, they may went to one side, other guys went to another side, and y'all not that y'all not friends no more, but y'all don't deal with each other like how y'all used to deal with each other because of the gang stuff and everything that came along with that. So that was like a hard lesson, and you know, then seeing violence and stuff kind of escalate throughout the neighborhood once the drugs really came in, and just seeing how Compton kind of just transformed. It went from people owning homes and properties to where, you know, it wasn't thriving anymore. You know, Compton used to thrive. My dad used to work at Harry C. Clark Buick when he used to be on Long Beach Boulevard across from Bank of America. You know, Compton had everybody where you worked, where you lived at. But then when you start seeing the jobs, factories start leaving, then that's when you notice the shift. That was some of the hard lessons.
Man, I could agree with that. So, what was the things that you liked during your childhood years? Like, what influenced you the most? Like, just becoming a young teenager.
Well, one of the major influences was my introduction to hip hop, to rap music at that time. My first song I heard was obviously Rapper's Delight and all that, but what kind of more influenced me was when Run DMC came out. They had a song called Rock Box. When I heard that song, man, and I heard the drums on there, how they was rocking, I just like fell in love with hip hop. And ever since that day, you know, pop locking in the driveway, we used to lay the cardboards out the driveway and just break dancing, all that. That kind of was like one of my main influences, was just the music, the hip hop movement, and how the New York cats kind of had a little bit of influence on kind of what we did out here, even though we had our own thing. But just remembering that moment, like I said, when I heard that song Rock Box, you know, kind of was one of the childhood memories that stuck with me, that still sticks with me to this day.
So, how did Compton shape you into becoming the man you are today?
Basically, like I said, just living there and being there and watching the way the transformation of the city from as a child growing up all the way to my adult life. You know, I remember Mayor Tucker came to our elementary school, spoke to us back in like 1982, 83, you know, things like that kind of stick with you. Seeing a Black person in a powerful position as far as politics, you know, face to face. You know, I didn't see him on TV. I actually met the man, and you know, just little things like that, you know, kind of shape you as you grow, you know, because you realize anything's possible if you put the work behind it and make the sacrifices and do what you got to do. So Compton, in a sense, prepared me for what I go through now, because that environment with everything that came along with it shapes you. It shapes your mindset, you know, and either you can use it as a positive or a negative. I chose to use it as a positive because I felt if you could come from that and survive that and everything that came along with it, you can pretty much do anything you want to do in life.
Totally agree with that. So, looking back, what do you think people misunderstand about Compton?
Some of the misconceptions and misunderstandings, it kind of go back to what we were speaking on earlier in the podcast when I was talking about, families owning their properties and people, keeping their properties up. Compton was a beautiful place. It didn't look like a ghetto. People kind of think it's just ghetto trash. If you go through some of those neighborhoods, like I said, all those single family homes and stuff, that tree lined streets, all that was like nice back then. I remember my cousins from Texas used to come out in the summertime, right? One time they came out, they like asked my mom, like, Aunt Dora, are you guys rich? Because they just saw the neighborhood, how it looked. And my mom said, boy, take your butt outside and go play. Stop asking me dumb questions. But just like I said, the perception is that it's not that. But if you really truly from Compton and was born and raised there, you would know that. It used to be a beautiful place. Yeah, I know some areas might be a little shabby than others, but like I said, the misconception is that the whole city is like that, and that's not true.
Totally agree. So, what do loyalty mean to you, far as like with your friendships? Some people say, man, when I'm in survival mode, loyalty goes out the window. I mean, I know you're not like that because I know you, but I'm just asking, what do loyalty mean to you when it comes down to you and your friends?
That mean everything to me. Loyalty is like, I'm big on that. Like, I feel, and like I said, this, Bone, if we friends, I'm your friend to the end, regardless, whether you in the right or the wrong. Now, I'm going to correct you when you're wrong, and I would expect the same in return. If I'm wrong about something, correct me. But loyalty to me means you stand by that person or those people or whatever, regardless of the situation. Now, that being said, yeah, you're not going to go out and do no dumb stuff or anything like that. But I'm just not a person that is down with people that switch up or try to act treacherous towards another brother or something like that. Like I said, loyalty with friends, family members, it just resonates with me. I never turn my back on a family member or on a homeboy or nothing under any circumstance. That's why I earned my respect in the streets of Compton, Long Beach, wherever I've been. People respect me because I am who I said I am. I never tried to be something I wasn't or perpetrate or anything like that. So when people cross paths with me, they know I'm genuine. And that earns you respect when you're a genuine person, and people can see that because they can see that by the way you carry yourself, the way you walk, the way you talk. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We're about to go to another commercial break, and then we're going to ask some more questions.
All right.
Hey, Les, so I already know the answer to this question, but just for the viewers, when you was a kid, what kind of kid you used to be?
Kind of, like I said, was basically a typical kickback kid. Like I said, I was into sports, things of that nature. I wasn't a trouble child or problem child or nothing like that. You know, I had my little issues like any other child would, but for the most part, you know, sports was like big in our family, big in our neighborhood, our community. It was always competition. You know, we always, you know, played against guys around the corner from you in football, basketball. That was the main thing back then, you know, as a kid growing up, you know, sometimes squabbling with the homies and stuff. So all that was part of the childhood, you know, and the development, you had to have some squabbles, you know, you didn't want nobody trying to punk you or nothing like that. So, you know, that was all part of the development during the childhood stages going into the teenage stages and all of that. But, you know, I wasn't a kid that was, like I said, in and out of juvenile hall or nothing like that. I didn't give my parents no kind of problems like that. But I would say for the most part, I was a good kid. You know, I didn't, you know, do a lot of devious type stuff. You know, that wasn't my thing.
If you could give a message to your younger self, what would it be?
Message to my younger self. I think one of the things, well, to my young adult self would be, I wish I would have invested in the community, invested in properties and things of that nature. Because as you get older, you learn money management. You learn things that, dang, if I knew this back in 1998, I could have already built some type of empire in Compton and own a lot of properties and kind of get our demographic back in the city. When I was growing up there, Compton was like 93% African American. You know, it's not that now. Obviously, you know, we both see that, but like I said, back then it was thriving. You know, you had our own banks. Capital Bank used to be on, I think it was Compton Boulevard, used to be a black-owned bank. My mom used to bank there. So things of that nature and stuff is something I wish I could tell my younger self that I wish I'd have knew then that I know now. You know, investing and putting money back into the community and creating opportunity.
Nice. Was there any warning signs or opportunities or life lessons that you wish you would have paid more attention to?
In terms of that, only thing I can really say about that, yes, some things you see as you're going along your journey, you wish you would have paid more attention to, or as far as maybe losing friends to gang violence and things you kind of could foresee could happening when you're leading that life. And even if you're not in that life, you know, it's easy to get caught up out here in the streets, you know, and just little warning signs, little things like that we need to pay attention to. Is like paying attention to your body. When your body's telling you something, hey, something's wrong, I need to go get checked out or whatever. It's the same in the streets, you know, little things that you see happening or you can foreshadow, you need to pay attention to because it can come back to hurt you later on if you don't pay attention to the signs, if you don't acknowledge, hey, what's going on around you. You know, you got to keep your head on the swivel, you know, so those type of things like that, Bone.
Man, totally agree. What kept you going when you was going through difficult seasons in life?
One of the main things that kept me going is our faith. You know, I came from a God like background family, you know, go to church, you know, all of that stuff. My parents, you know, your parents are your first teachers. So just thinking about the life lessons that they taught me growing up kind of helped me navigate through stuff that I went through once I became an adult or a young adult and going through some tough times and stuff. I always kind of went back to those teachings and stuff because I always was good at learning from others. You know, I always paid attention to what other people were doing and how they reacted to certain situations and things. So when I came across that situation or something even different, I can always think back, okay, this is how they handled this, so I'm going to handle it this way. And because as a parent, you always want your kids to be better than what you were when you were coming up. You want to teach them better, and you just want to carry that on generation to generation. And so that's kind of what I use growing up around people and hanging around older people, just watching how they navigated, how they move. That helped me through tough times, bad times, hard times, emotional times. And that plays a big part of it, just my upbringing.
That's a good segue to the next question. What do you want to tell the younger generation they need to understand about legacy and, just the history of Compton?
What I would pass on to the younger generation is always keep reading, always try to learn something, never stop learning. It's things about Compton and stuff that I learned and still on a daily basis. And like I said, I came from there. So I'm not ashamed to say, hey, I learned something new about Compton that I didn't know, or a fact about Compton that I wasn't aware of. So my message to the young people is always try to develop, keep learning, keep reaching out and obtaining or attaining information, because you never can stop learning. You never can never stop enhancing the movement. And our thing is we want to bring Compton back to its former glory. Compton should be up here. It shouldn't be something looked at as a downgrade or a negative. You want to get to where people want to move back to Compton, want to redevelop the area and make it vibrant and thriving like it used to be in the 70s and the early 80s and things like that. So that's what I would pass on to the young people, Bone.
Lovely. So when people hear your story on this podcast, what do you hope they take away from it?
I hope they take away everything I said was genuine. It came from the heart. It was nothing made up or fabricated. My goal in life is always strive to be truthful and honest as I could possibly be, and factual. So I just hope they take something positive from it and apply it to whatever their journey is, whatever they're going through in life, and use it as an inspiration in that sense.
So, all right, we're going to go to one more commercial break, and then I'm going to come back with the final thought and the short story.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Big shout out to all our amazing customers who've already jumped on board the Compton in a Box. Your support means the world to us. We've revamped our website to make it even easier to join the subscription. For upcoming months, don't miss out on the excitement. Head back to your cart on micpt.com and subscribe today. Let's make every month a Compton celebration. Compton in a Box. Subscription perks. micpt.com Compton in a Box. VIP experience appreciation. Head back to your cart on micpt.com.
I like to read Proverbs. I like to read Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on your own understanding. And in all thine ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. It was a young boy walking home with a heavy backpack, upset because nothing that day went his way. When he got to the sidewalk, he said, God, don't you see what I'm going through? And as he kept walking, an older man sitting on the porch said to the boy, that bag looks heavy. The boy said, it is. The man smiled and said, funny how a chair can be trusted with all your weight and how you can trust God that he'll help lighten the load. And the boy stopped and took the backpack off for a minute and sat down. And for the first time all that day, he finally had got an answer to what he was realizing, that even though the backpack was heavy, it wasn't as heavy as he expected when he started out. And we just like to end this one with, you don't have to understand everything, just trust God. And I'd like to thank you, Les, for being on the podcast. And I thank everybody for tuning in. Hey, you want to tell them how they can find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, obviously Les Pickett on Facebook, or on IG, Instagram, at Les Pickett on Instagram. That's all the social medias I have. So you'll find me on either one of those platforms. And I just want to say, Bone, real quick, before you let me go, thanks for having me on anyway and inviting me on the podcast to share my story and a little bit about my life. But I want to say, your CD, well, the USB that you gave me, I bumped it. I've been bumping ever since. I like that song, No Weapons. I think that's one of the titles. Then another one called No Time Boys. That whole part, it don't have the titles, but I put it in for the second part of it. But the first part where No Weapons, that part on it had all the titles. So those songs kind of stood out to me. So I just want to acknowledge you guys on that. That is bumping. I like it. You know, like I said, kind of reminds me of Smoke in the City, Plead the Fifth, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, all of them. So keep doing what y'all doing, brother, man. I like what y'all got going on at Factor House, brother.
Man, I appreciate you, Les. I appreciate you for coming on the show and just giving your genuine take. And I like to say, rest in peace, Freaky Dre, man, because that what we was doing with Runoff Records was epic. It was like we was gonna make them recognize what we was doing. It just, things went a certain way, and it didn't turn out like the way we wanted, but we still made memorable memories. It was just an amazing time to be from Compton at that moment.
Yeah, that was the whole beauty of it, man. Rest in peace, Big Freaky Dre, and all other brothers from Compton, but like you said, during that time, that was epic and historical what we were trying to accomplish and put down, and we did some good things, and it laid the foundation to where we are today. So let's know we all praises due to Allah for that, brother. I never would trade none of that in for the world or any kind of money, man. That time was priceless during our younger years.
Absolutely. All right, man. I'm gonna have to have you back on the show so we can maybe on one of the other shows, like in between the tracks on Monday, we could play some of that hard white and play some of the Factor House songs from back then.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Look, all I need you to do is find that hard white CD.
Yeah, I got it. I got to look at my garage. I got some copies, original copies still in my garage, the actual CD itself. So when I get it, I'll break it down to you so you can kind of do your magic with it, and maybe you can get it on a USB thing or something, and make it accessible for the other people. But I do got the CD, the master CDs, and all that still in my possession.
Okay, we're gonna make that happen, and we're gonna play it on the air, play it on the podcast.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do it, Bone. Thank you, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you. We're gonna go to one more commercial break before we end.
Okay.
Step into the store, feel the vibe so pure. Young Christian, eternal faith, love's the only cure. Wear your hope on your sleeve, let your spirit glow. Support the youth, let their dreams grow. Young Christian, eternal faith.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody again for tuning in, and tune in to MICPT Channel 12 Compton tomorrow for In Between the Tracks. And we'll see you
Yes,
on the
sir.
next one.
Yes,
Peace.
sir.